So think about the true crime audio you were binging on your commute this morning.
Oh, yeah. Everybody has their favorite show right now.
Right. But there is this very real and honestly incredibly unsettling chance that the host you were listening to just, well, that they don't exist.
Right. They don't breathe, they don't sleep, and they are definitely not human.
Exactly. And that's what we're looking at today. We are doing a deep dive into the silent but massive invasion of synthetic audio.
It's a really jarring realization to confront, I think, because, we are historically wired to associate the human voice with intimacy and authenticity and truth.
Yeah, hearing someone speak feels so personal.
It does. But the technological barrier to creating this really convincing, emotive speech has essentially dropped to zero, and the whole architecture of our daily media is just shifting so rapidly to reflect that new reality.
Yeah, and to really understand how rapid this shift actually is, we are pulling from a pretty heavy stack of sources for this deep dive today.
We've got a lot to get through.
We do.
Yeah.
We are looking at a groundbreaking new industry report, some raw data pulled directly from the open source podcast index, a CNN interview about production pipelines, and some pretty wild case studies from independent creators.
Yeah, and I think it's important to state right up front that the mission here isn't to speculate about some distant, sci-fi future where robots take over the radio.
No, not at all. This is happening right now. We are examining this explosion of AI-generated audio that is actively flooding the major digital platforms that you use every single day.
The sheer velocity of it is honestly the hardest part to wrap your head around, because we are witnessing an absolute deluge of synthetic content just hitting the digital ecosystem.
And most people don't even notice it.
Right. The vast majority of listeners have absolutely no idea it's happening. And to be clear, that invisible nature, the fact that you don't notice it, is entirely by design.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we need to start with the scale of this phenomenon. The numbers are just staggering.
They really are.
So, according to the open source tracking platform called Podcast Index, which, by the way, is operated by Дэйвом Джонсом, they analyzed newly submitted RSS feeds over a very short, very specific window.
Just a 9-day period, right?
Yeah, exactly, just 9 days. And in that span, they found that nearly 39% of the new audio feeds might have been entirely AI-generated.
39%?
Yeah, like 4 out of 10 new shows.
What's fascinating here is when you look at how the Podcast Index actually tracks this, it reveals a lot about the strategy behind the flood.
Because they aren't just, like, listening to random audio files.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They aren't just sitting there playing MP3s. They are analyzing the metadata, the hosting patterns, and the underlying RSS architecture of these submissions.
Oh, wow.
And what they found is that these synthetic feeds aren't being hidden away on some obscure dark web servers. They are being aggressively uploaded across the biggest, most mainstream platforms.
In plain sight.
Exactly. With a particularly heavy concentration targeting Spreaker, which operates under the massive iHeartRadio umbrella.
But wait, hold on. The report specifically notes that Spreaker's website actually does have a transparency system in place, right?
Yes, you do, yeah.
They put this visual tag on the side of the screen to alert the listener if a show is AI-generated. So if they have a system to highlight this, why are we calling it an invisible explosion?
Well, the catch is in how that tag is actually applied. You see, that label only appears if Spreaker's specific detection software flags the audio as synthetic.
Oh, I see.
And the arms race between generation software and detection software is just incredibly lopsided right now.
You mean the generation that the AI making the voices is outpacing the platform's ability to even catch it?
By a very wide margin, audio detection software typically relies on finding heuristics.
What does that mean exactly?
So it looks for spectral artifacts or, perfectly uniform syllable spacing or this unnatural lack of background room tone.
Basically, the tiny glitches that prove it's a robot.
Exactly. But the latest text-to-speech models, the TTS models, they're specifically trained to inject synthetic breaths and slight voice cracks and variable pacing.
Wow, they add the flaws on purpose.
Yeah, so by the time a detection algorithm updates to catch a specific audio artifact, the generation model has already been patched to eliminate it completely.
Okay, so it's like imagine walking into your local library, and overnight, you discover that almost 40% of the new books on the shelves were written by ghosts while you were sleeping.
That's a great way to put it.
Right, but then the librarian at the front desk is just like, oh, don't worry, we put a sticker on the ghost-written books. But only if we happen to catch the ghost leaving ectoplasm on the keyboard.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if the software can't spot the newest generation of voices, Aren't we basically just relying on the honor system for robots?
Yes, and that is the massive loophole we are currently living in. There's this rapidly widening gap between human perception and software detection.
It's kind of terrifying.
It is. But the fundamental reason this is happening, and really the reason it matters so deeply to your daily habits as a listener, is that the barrier to entry has evaporated.
The cost, you mean?
Right. Historically, creating broadcast-quality audio required serious capital. You needed good microphones, sound-treated studio time, expensive editing software.
And someone with an actually compelling speaking voice.
Yeah, exactly. It required friction.
Right. You couldn't just hit a single button and suddenly have an hour of polished audio exist.
Precisely. You needed talent and you needed money. But today, all you need is a text prompt and an API key.
And because that friction is gone, we're seeing an entirely new economic model emerge.
A model that relies on overwhelming automated volume rather than high-cost production value.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of this whole audio assembly line. Because catching confused synthetic feeds on a tracker doesn't really explain the sheer industrial scale of the volume we're seeing.
Right, you have to follow the money.
Exactly. To understand how thousands of shows hit the internet in a single week, we have to look at a specific group highlighted in the CNN report. They're called the Quiet Please Podcast Network.
Yeah, they operate under Inception AI, and the output they are generating is just incredibly difficult to process through the lens of traditional media.
It's mind-boggling.
According to their own portfolio data, Quiet Please has already deployed over 4,000 distinct shows.
And we're not talking about 4,000 individual audio files. These are entirely separate, serialized shows.
Right. 4,000 different series, and they are averaging 3,000 new episodes a week across that entire network.
3,000 a week.
Yeah. They are reportedly reaching over 10 million people, and they are actively running dynamic advertising to monetize these synthetic hosts.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, the profit margin. They confirmed directly to CNN that the cost to produce each episode.
Yeah, this is the crazy part.
The cost is $1 or less. $1 to make an entire episode.
To understand how an hour of audio can cost a single dollar, you really have to look at the automated pipeline. Because there is no studio, there's no producer, there's no host.
It's just code.
Exactly. It's simply a server making automated calls to different software interfaces. So an overarching script prompts a large language model to write, say, a 5,000-word script.
Which costs what? Fractions of a cent in compute power.
Yeah, literally pennies. Then that text is automatically fed into a text-to-speech API that synthesizes the voice for maybe 50 to 80 cents.
Unbelievable.
And finally, a Python script packages the audio file and automatically pushes it directly to an RSS feed. The whole thing operates completely devoid of human intervention.
Okay, but I have a serious question about quality versus quantity here. Because if a piece of media costs a single dollar to produce from start to finish, are they just gaming the search algorithms with empty calories?
That's a very fair question.
Right. Like, is this just the audio equivalent of ultra-processed fast food? Or is there actual tangible value being provided to the listener here?
Well, it is very tempting to just dismiss it all as junk audio. And honestly, much of it likely lacks the nuance, the pacing, and the soul of a deeply human-crafted documentary.
Sure.
However, dismissing it ignores the brilliant, albeit highly disruptive business model at play here. This is the ultimate frictionless realization of the long tail of content.
Oh, right. You are talking about the economic theory where you stop trying to make one massive hit for millions of people, and instead you make millions of niche products for just a few people each.
Precisely. Let's look at the traditional broadcast model for a second. It relies on CPM, or cost per mil advertising, where you get paid per 1,000 listeners.
Right, the classic radio model.
Yeah. A traditional station or major network needs hundreds of thousands of listeners just to break even on the immense cost of the studio, the host's salary, marketing, all of it.
So they are forced to create really broad, mainstream content to capture the widest possible demographic.
Exactly. But at $1 an episode, that math completely inverts.
Because the financial risk essentially drops to zero.
You don't need a mainstream hit anymore. If you create an episode that only 50 people on Earth want to listen to, well, traditional media would consider that a catastrophic failure.
They'd cancel it immediately.
Right. But for an AI pipeline, 50 listeners will generate a few cents in ad revenue. That pays back the $1 production cost almost immediately.
Wow.
So when you aggregate that across 3,000 episodes a week, you build a highly profitable empire entirely out of micro audiences.
And the sources show exactly how hyper-niche these topics get. I mean, Quiet Please is generating content across multiple languages that traditional media would never even touch.
They really are.
Like, they have an ongoing Portuguese language biography detailing the life of Bruno Mars.
Which is so specific.
Right. And they have another feed dedicated entirely to the daily benefits of walking 10,000 steps a day.
They're basically identifying these tiny, unserved pockets of curiosity and then deploying an automated host to fill the void instantly.
It flips the entire script on how we value an audience. You no longer have to belong to a massive demographic to get media tailored exactly to your unique interests.
Exactly.
But, the report doesn't just stop at mass-produced pop culture trivia. We actually have to shift gears here because this zero marginal cost model is now hitting high-stakes, deeply complex investigative reporting.
And this is where the technology moves from being just a cheap content factory to a tool that actively circumvents the economic bottlenecks of traditional journalism.
Right. So we have a case study here centered around an independent entrepreneur named Adam Levy. And he is using this exact technology on a smaller scale, but arguably with a much heavier impact.
Definitely.
He built an automated system to generate an investigative show based entirely on processing the Epstein files.
Yes, the recently unsealed legal documents.
Now, just to be incredibly clear to everyone listening, before we look at this case study, we are strictly focusing on the technology here.
Yes, absolutely.
Regardless of your personal take on the source material or the political dimensions of those legal files, we aren't taking sides or endorsing any viewpoints at all. We are purely analyzing the mechanism this creator's using to process that specific mountain of legal text.
And that distinction is crucial because the mechanism itself is revolutionary. Levy outlined his reasoning on his Substack, and he pointed out this fundamental flaw in modern investigative media, which is the sheer cost of human time.
It takes so long to read.
Right. Deep reporting requires a human being to physically sit down and read dense, incredibly dry legal depositions before they can even begin to formulate a narrative.
Let's actually do the math on that for a second. The Epstein files drop, and it's something like 10,000 pages of legal documents.
It's massive.
Yeah. And the average person reads about 250 words a minute. So to read 10,000 pages of dense legal jargon, a journalist is looking at over 300 hours of nonstop, perfect concentration.
Which is impossible to do straight through.
Right, that is basically 2 solid months of full-time work just to read the raw data, let alone verify it, connect the dots, and actually write a script.
And most modern media companies simply do not have the budget to pay a reporter to sit in a locked room for 2 months just to read.
The friction of human reading speed essentially locks that information away from the general public.
Exactly. But Levy figured out how to use AI to bypass that bottleneck entirely. Instead of reading it manually, the AI digests the massive volumes of text in mere hours.
But wait, how does an AI actually digest 10,000 pages without just completely losing the plot? I mean, it's not just speed reading left to right, is it?
No, not at all. It relies on a completely different architecture. Typically, this involves vector databases and incredibly large context windows.
Okay, I need a metaphor here, because it feels less like a really fast paralegal speed reading through a stack of papers.
Right, that's the wrong way to picture it.
So is it more like taking those 10,000 pages, shredding them into a massive bucket of puzzle pieces, and then pouring them into a sieve that is mathematically designed to only let the pieces with matching edges fall through?
I like that.
Like you just tell the sieve what shape you're looking for, and it finds it.
That is actually an excellent way to visualize retrieval augmented generation, or R.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. The system turns all of that text into mathematical coordinates. It doesn't read the story like a human does. It maps the relationships between names, dates, and locations across all 10,000 pages simultaneously.
So it sees the whole picture at once.
Exactly. So when Levy asks the system to pull a specific narrative thread, your metaphorical sieve catches every single relevant puzzle piece across the entire dataset in seconds.
That is wild. And importantly, the report notes that everything his system publishes is sourced, it's cited, and it's totally verifiable back to the original text.
It's completely transparent in that regard.
Yeah. And he built a new company to back this effort. He is aiming to produce 120 episodes a month based purely on this automated investigative research.
Just think about the implications of that volume for a second. By turning unreadable mountains of legal jargon into digestible, verifiable audio in a matter of hours, this technology fundamentally democratizes access to complex information.
But, and I have to push back on the limits of this here.
Sure.
Does this unprecedented speed completely replace human intuition? Like, can a vector database actually replicate the gut feeling of a seasoned investigative reporter who notices a tiny, weird discrepancy in a witness statement?
No, it doesn't, and that's a key point. It does not replace the human instinct to ask the right question in the first place. The human still has to build the sieve, as you said, and direct the inquiry.
So what does it do then?
What it does is completely change the starting line. It allows an independent creator with a laptop and a $100 API budget to punch at the exact same weight class as a massive, fully funded investigative newsroom.
It completely removes the financial friction of discovery.
Exact.
Which is incredibly empowering if you are an independent researcher. But, individuals and automated networks aren't the only ones playing this game.
Oh, absolutely not. The big players are moving in.
Right. The massive tech conglomerates are watching this zero-friction model very closely. And they are using it to completely redefine what the word podcast even means at this point.
Which brings us to the ultimate corporate evolution of audio search. And arguably, this is the most disruptive shift in our entire stack of sources today.
So, what does this all mean? According to the report, Amazon is actively cashing in on generative audio.
Yeah, they're integrating it directly.
They have created this makeshift AI audio experience that is centered entirely around the products that users are searching for on their app.
It's such a wild concept.
It is.
Yep.
So, picture this. You are researching, a silicone spatula on Amazon.
Okay, a spatula.
Suddenly, this generative audio kicks in. It tells you about the item in full detail, but it doesn't just read the product description in some flat robot voice.
No, it's much more engaging than that.
It operates like a live dynamic talk show, like QVC. It actually takes questions from users, live, right there in the app, and adapts its script on the fly to answer them.
It is synthesizing reviews, product specs, and user queries in real time, just to generate a bespoke audio segment tailored exactly to your immediate curiosity.
I am sitting here genuinely bewildered. Because if you are having a live, interactive, real-time audio Q&A with a synthetic voice about the heat resistance of a spatula, are we even talking about a podcast anymore?
Yeah.
Has the word entirely lost its original meaning?
It really has. This raises an important question because we are witnessing a complete paradigm shift in the definition of the medium.
How so?
Well, for the last 20 years, digital audio has primarily been a passive one-way broadcast. A creator records an interview, they upload the file, and you, the listener, passively receive it.
Right. Even the hyper-niche AI shows about Bruno Mars operate on that old broadcast logic.
Exactly. They function just like an on-demand radio station. But what Amazon is doing, and really what the underlying technology broadly enables right now, is shifting audio away from a passive broadcast file.
And turning it into what?
Into a personalized, real-time, interactive utility.
It is the next evolution of search. I mean, if you look at the history, we used to go to a physical library to find a book.
Right.
Then we went to Google to get a list of blue links. Then we asked smart speakers to just read us the top link.
Yeah, the progression is clear.
And now you don't read a list of results at all. You listen to a custom-generated, infinitely patient subject matter expert explain the results to you. And you can interrupt them mid-sentence to ask follow-up questions.
The audio shapes itself perfectly to the exact contours of whatever you happen to be curious about in that very second. We are moving out of the era of recorded media and straight into the era of dynamic generative utility.
Wow. Okay, if we take a step back and just look at the sheer ground we covered in this deep dive, the speed of adoption is honestly dizzying.
It's moving faster than anyone predicted.
We started with the sheer shock of that podcast index data. 39% of new feeds potentially flooding the market with synthetic voices in just 9 days.
Huge numbers.
Then we unpacked the automated API pipelines of the Quiet Please network, churning out micro-audience content for just $1 an episode by breaking the traditional advertising model.
A long tail of audio.
Exactly. Then we saw how independent creators are using vector databases to digest 10,000 pages of legal texts in mere hours, democratizing deep research, all the way up to Amazon turning e-commerce searches into interactive, live generative talk shows.
The landscape of information distribution has fundamentally shifted, and I think the absolute key takeaway for you, the listener, is that your digital feeds are changing underneath your feet right now.
Without you even noticing.
Right. The barrier to creating authoritative-sounding knowledge has dropped to absolute zero. And this requires you to be more critical, more attentive, and honestly more discerning than ever before about the voices you allow into your earbuds.
You really have to pay attention.
You do. You can no longer assume that a professional-sounding voice, complete with, natural breaths and perfect pacing, equates to human expertise or traditional editorial standards.
Yeah, the era of relying on the honor system for robots is officially over. Which leaves me with one final lingering question for you to mull over.
What's that?
Well, if generative models can now instantly synthesize an endless stream of highly specific, perfectly tailored audio just for your exact interests, your exact searches, and your exact curiosities, will we eventually lose our shared cultural reality?
That's a heavy thought.
Think about it. What happens when you are walking down the street, listening to a fascinating, entirely personalized world of information that literally no one else on Earth is hearing?